There is an infamous bot in Rocket League. It's not like any other bot in the vanilla version of this game. It's said to be at a GC level, which means it's better than 99% of all Rocket League players. Many different content creators have tested their skills against this bot. Many have tried, many have failed, and many have succeeded. And if you don't already know what I'm talking about, it's the NEXTO bot. I had watched many different videos on this bot, and I have to say, it's pretty incredible. Now, even though I'm a grand champion in 2s and 3s, my 1s rank is only champ 1. And even after seeing all the footage on this bot, I still for some reason had enough ego to think, this bot can't be that bad. Well, I was wrong. And if you didn't see my YouTube Shorts video on my first game against NEXTO, here it is. So yeah, you saw how it went. All my ego got pushed out the window, and any confidence I had left in my ability to play Rocket League went with it. And to be honest, it left a sour taste in my mouth. So I decided, I'm going to play NEXTO every day until I win. Can a champion beat a grand champion bot? I was adamant to prove this hypothesis true. So in order to do this, every day I would do my usual warm-up, then I would play NEXTO bot 5 times in a row, and I would repeat this routine every day until the day I won. My benchmark was 2 weeks. I said to myself, if I don't beat it in 2 weeks, I will give up and NEXTO reigns victor. And to be honest, I didn't have any confidence that I would even do it, but you will see the results. So let's get into the video. So day 1 I decided I was just going to go in and test as much as I can against NEXTO. I believed it was important to do this at the start, so I knew what playstyle I should have on offense and defense. So I would try a bunch of different shots, both from aerial and ground play, and it didn't take me long to find out that NEXTO can defend ground plays extremely well. I personally don't think my ground game is great in general, but every good flick or well placed shot I took, NEXTO saved every single one of them. And another note is to understand that NEXTO's recoveries are almost perfect, and its ability to transition from defense is so impressive. So many times I would think I have offensive pressure, I would go for boost, and it's instantly in my net. So if I went all in on a play, I would have to score or be scored on. So for the most part, dribbling was kind of out of the picture to defeat NEXTO. However, what I did find out, and I kind of already knew, is that NEXTO finds it very difficult to defend aerial plays, bumps, and demos. So every time I took it to the air, NEXTO would challenge at the complete wrong times. Ceiling shots are especially difficult, so I knew if I wanted a surefire way to score, it would have to be through aerial plays or bumps. Now, NEXTO on offense, however, is a different breed. Its flicks and shooting are immaculate, and as it's a bot, it can read my inputs, so every time I went to challenge early while it was dribbling, it would instantly flick it over me. So I knew finding a way to defend against it would seem very difficult. Though I did find out that if you take control of the ball when you have a lot of boost, it mostly leaves you alone and goes to defend. So that was my glimpse of hope when NEXTO has offensive pressure. At the end of day 1, NEXTO beat me in all 5 games, with the closest game being 8-3. By the beginning of day 2, I decided I would dedicate days to focus on something in order to beat this bot. So day 2 and 3 were all about noticing my mistakes. So it was to find out why NEXTO was scoring so much and I wasn't scoring enough. And boy did I notice a lot. For starters, my shooting and offensive plays were inconsistent. A lot of the times I would take a poor shot right straight at the goal, or my air dribbles wouldn't go high enough, or the ball would be too far forward for a ceiling shot. This wasn't really to do with my control, but more of my decision making. There were a lot of times where I knew I wouldn't get a good setup for an air dribble or aerial play, but I just went for it anyways. Also, there were many times when I was in risky positions and going for the ball, knowing it was risky, so NEXTO would easily save the ball and score on transition. Which leads me to my next fatal mistake, which was the fact that my recoveries are terrible. What I've never realized until this day was that every time I went for a shot, I never thought about my recovery afterwards, and that also meant I wasn't focusing on boost management. so at least 40% of the goals I conceded were from me going all in on a bad play, using all my boost, recovering badly, and the next throw just controlling the ball and scoring on an open net. So I knew I would have to focus on my shooting decision, and if I did go big on a play, I had to make sure I focus on how to recover and get back on defense. Day 2, NEXTO won all 5 games, with my best game being 11-5. Day 3, NEXTO won all 5 games, with my best game being 8-5. Now day 4 began, and I noticed all my mistakes, so now it was time to work on them. And the one I thought was the most detrimental to my gameplay was my recoveries. Not only was it where I made my biggest mistakes, it's also the easiest to correct. As I mentioned earlier before, I have never really consciously looked at my recoveries when going for mechanical plays. So if I went for a ceiling shot, I would put all my focus into hitting the ball and trying to score, so I was never conscious of the boost I left myself with or where my car would be landing after I hit the ball. So for this day, I focused only on my recoveries. While I did still try to win the game, I put my mind on where my car should land after I make my play. I also kept note of how much boost I had when making the play and making sure I would leave just enough boost to recover if I needed to. And if I made a bad touch on a mechanical play, instead of going all in, I would back out and make sure NEXTO wouldn't be able to instantly counterattack. This actually went pretty well. The scores don't really show it, but I felt a lot more confident against NEXTO. And I was actually recovering and getting back to stop a lot of its attacks. So where I usually would have conceded, I would keep enough boost or momentum in order to prevent it. And I also felt way more consistent and confident with my aerial plays, because I was taking my time more to make sure the setup was perfect. Day 4, NEXTO won all 5 games, with my best game being 9-4. Now day 5 was all about trying to figure out something that I just couldn't understand, and that's how to defend the NEXTO bot. But more specifically, it's defending NEXTO when he has the ball on top of his car. I chose to specifically focus on that because it seems almost impossible to defend it. The moment you try an early challenge, it flicks the ball right over you, but you also can't fake it. So for the past 4 days, I've almost gave up every time NEXTO takes control. But that all changed on day 5, because I found a pretty solid way to defend the flicks. I would wait for NEXTO to get somewhat close to the net, pre-jump, but keep my flip. Most of the time, NEXTO doesn't flick the ball, instead tries to go under and low 50. But that gives me the chance to use my flip to 50-50 it into the corner or maybe get a dunk. And on this day, you could really tell the difference. The games were getting closer and closer, and the final game of the day, I made 5 saves. Which may not sound like a lot, but it was a huge improvement for me since before I could barely get more than 1. And I was actually 1 goal up with 1 minute to go, but I did end up letting in 3 goals towards the end and losing. However, I kept NEXTO to only 5 goals, which showed a massive improvement in my gameplay, and I was now extremely confident that I could defeat this NEXTO bot. At the end of day 5, NEXTO won all 5 games, with my best game being 5-3. So day 6 came and there wasn't too much I wanted to focus on. However, I did decide that I needed to use my space a bit more often. Most of the time, if you have boost and control of the ball, NEXTO mostly sits in net waiting for your shot. So instead of me rushing into an aerial play, I would take my time, and if I'm not confident with the setup, I would keep control and take it to the other side. And this worked wonders. I found myself scoring way more goals than usual against NEXTO, and I even scored a couple of really nice goals. So it was clear that I was feeling a bit more mechanical than usual. But in game 3, I had an incredible game. For the first time, I was really going head to head with NEXTO, and I took the lead many different times. However, I unfortunately conceded 2 goals in the last minute, which made me lose the game 5-4. Even though I was a little disappointed that I choked in the last minute, this is the only time that I kept NEXTO within 1 goal, and I took this confidence with me into game 4. I started the game extremely well, scoring 3 goals within the first minute. Even though NEXTO scored 1 shortly after, I quickly answered back with another. And then around half time, NEXTO made a big mistake beaming a shot off the crossbar, giving me an open net for me to go 5-1 up. At this point, I realized I could actually do it. I could actually beat NEXTO bot after just 6 days. After going back and forth for the next minute and a half, I was 7-5 up with less than 1 minute left. But I had been here before, so I didn't want to let go of that lead. And what happened? I did exactly that. I conceded a goal with 30 seconds left and then another 10 seconds later, which meant we were tied 7-all with 20 seconds left. And after NEXTO making a crazy save and giving me possession, I had one last chance. With the pressure piling on me to win, I mess up my first touch and can't recover, so it hits the floor. Which means one thing: we're going to overtime. After a kickoff win, I take possession and take a shot on goal. NEXTO saves it, but gives me the ball back. With 43 boost, I go to take the ball into the air, but then I remembered the focus of today. So I took back control and took the ball to the other mid boost and go for one more ceiling shot. And I did it. I had finally beaten NEXTO bot. A champ 1 has beaten a supposed GC bot in a 1v1. I honestly thought I would go 2 weeks straight without winning a single game. But here I am on only day 6 winning 8-7 in overtime. So is a champ 1 better than NEXTO bot? No. And honestly, this whole thing was kinda pointless. But now we know it's possible to beat the bot even if you aren't GC. And even though NEXTO did beat me 28 games throughout this challenge, it's now NEXTO 28, me 1.